Let's go ahead and get started with the end game of Last Epoch. So at the very end, you defeat the snake, you talk to the snake, and then it puts you at this area over here, which is the end of time. So this is how the end game will actually start. So what are you going to do? Well, there's an NPC and you can talk to over here, but as soon as you talk to the NPC, you're going to go to the right, and you can talk to this NPC over here, and you're going to walk. I'll also maybe play something, but we're just here to just show you how it works. We're going to run into the basics of the end game. So it's a system similar to Path of Exile maps. You keep on fighting a bunch of maps and you complete an objective, and you're going to build up a bar. And I'm going to show you guys one full little map clear, but the rest of it is just kind of redundant to show multiple of these. But you may have certain different objectives, whether it is go to an area, push a button, or just kill enough enemies and then you open up a portal. So here's how it works. So you're going to start off over here. If you want to rush to the very, very end, you hug the right side. The right side technically gives you also better permanent buffs, like you can get extra like HP, mana, crit. There's like things that you can get when you complete these separate little, they're called timelines, but it's basically like kind of a region. So our goal is to complete all of them. I recommend you guys just to complete all of them because you might enjoy a certain like area, just like in Path of Exile, you kind of farm a certain area, and then once you complete all of it, you defeat a boss, and there are bosses in each one of these. There are several different bosses, which is awesome, but at the end you will be building up what's called corruption to make the game even harder, and you can actually kind of target farm what you want to pretty much at the start, which is awesome. So here it says it's level 58, and that kind of corresponds to the level. As we unlock them, it'll kind of have a number next to it, but eventually everything will go to 100, just like in Path of Exile. Everything will get to like the red maps, the T16, right? So at the very start of the end game, you will go and touch this over here. You'll see that if you want to go to the next areas, they're locked. And in order to unlock it and kind of complete the bridge to get to the next zone, you need to go ahead and do this area first. So the first one is the Fall of the Outcast. So we're going to click on this little pylon looking thing, and you'll see if I mouse over, on the right over here, you'll see what it says. So it says new enemy modifiers, and then it has player modifiers. So rare enemies have increased health and damage, but in return we get increased item rarity, and there's also echo rewards for getting extra gold, and there's something called timeline stability. Our main goal is actually to build this up, and then there's going to be 3 like special events slash like bosses. It depends on the map that you're doing. But if I mouse over, you can see what we're getting at the end of the area. We get whatever it says. So you can see echo rewards, which means when we complete the map, this is what we get. If we die, we do not get the rewards. So it's important that your build has enough survivability. And if there's something that is kind of hard, like this one does way more damage, if they have extra health, I mean, it really doesn't matter too much. But you can see, in order to do this one over here, let's say I really wanted these runes, or I really wanted shields. Now, later it may give you a legendary, it may give you a set item. So you can kind of select the one that you want. I mean, in the very beginning, most of the rewards are pretty mediocre, but it's the beginning. You'll get better stuff later. So our goal is to get what's called stability. And if you want to get more stability, you can basically do more full map clears. Let's go ahead and hop into a map, and we'll just kind of play it, and I'll kind of explain it as we go along. So this one over here, it says destroy both blood spires. So we're going to go ahead and destroy both of the blood spires. And you can leave as soon as you complete the event. But you'll see in the right side where it says bonus stability. The more monsters we kill, the more stability we get. Now, is it better to full clear? I mean, the map is free. Like, unlike Path of Exile where you have to, like, invest into the map, right? So that's up to you. Now, later with corruption, some of these things can matter a little bit more because it becomes harder. But for the most part, in the earlier stages, it's really up to you. And again, since you have no cost investment of the map, do what you want to do. If you want my recommendation and what I plan to do, I plan to rush it up until we get the corruption.
That was a juicy one, Exile!
Yes, Einhar, very juicy. Now, you can kind of spec into what you want to with these lenses, but that's like almost for another like video. I just want to show you guys like the basics of it. So you can see we completed one of the objective, and there's another objective over here. And I'll show you the stability when we finish, and I'll show you guys kind of what the maps look like. And this part of like the end game, what you do want to look out for, obviously yes, shrines are good, but also look out for these chests. These are 100% worth going for. You may get legendaries, you may get exalted items. I don't know what the drop table is, but it seems like these chests, the one that has a little icon, it is worth doing most of the time. And if you want to, you can invest into looking at how to get a loot filter, because there's going to be way too many items, as you'll see, as you progress. But you can also save these shrines for like if there's like a boss or something. Well, this one's just a blood spire, so it doesn't really matter too much. But there are some where like you'll activate something and a bunch of monsters will spawn in, and you'd want to save the shrines. This is more useful when the game actually becomes harder. So if I want to gain more stability, which I may want to do so I can complete the amount of stability required to get to the next like node. So I'm just going to open up the portal here. So once I'm finished, now I can get more stability if I want to. Again, in the earlier stages, don't worry about it too much. Just start slamming these out so you can get kind of used to how these work. And then that's our reward. And then there's a chest on the right side, and I have a loot filter on already, but you can get 2 rewards. So you get one of them here and then one of them over here. Now, once we're done, and if you need to like shop, you can go ahead and do so. And I really recommend, if you guys can, get most of the Rune of Shatterings. This is actually pretty important. You will want these later on, as long as you have enough gold. I mean, like, at least if you're over 100k, if you are engaging in the trading in the game, then you do want to have a little bit of gold in case maybe an item pops up that you do want if you're using the trade system in the game, which this is probably going to be reserved for another video, because the point is just like the basic of the end game, and I want the whole trade video to be on its own. But basically, you do want to make sure you have enough of these glyphs of shattering, because if an item drops that you may want, like I may want this is just like bonus tips. So if I open up this over here, I can always, this is the forge, by the way. You can just click on the forge here too. Let's say I really want something here. I could always just take a rune of shattering, and ideally you would look in the loot filter for these items that you want, because let's say there's something that you really want in terms of like the shards. Like, let's say I really wanted cold and lightning resistance. Okay, I needed to get those. I would shatter them, and then it would give us these things over here. This is more important when you are interested in crafting. If you are just going to be buying all of your items, hey, that's totally cool too. You can go ahead and do that instead, and just buy your items via the currency. But after we complete one of the little maps here, we can click on this one more time, and then now that we completed this one, we can select either one of these. See how they're in gold? Those are the next ones that we can select. Now, some of these, just as a heads up, may last for more than one map. So I would say in the very beginning, this is one of the best tips, okay? Especially if you're having trouble with surviving. Now, the bonuses over here where it says new enemy modifiers, that they have a 15% critical strike chance. Now, maybe your build makes it so you take no crit damage, so then the bonus rewards are increased item rarity and 6% increased experience gain. That's even better, because there is a 2 next to it, which means it lasts for 2 echoes, which means the next 2 maps that we do will have both of these bonus rewards, which is really lucrative if you want to. Honestly, most of the stuff is so trash in the very beginning, I wouldn't really care too much about it. But as long as your build can handle it, you might as well get the extra bonus XP. XP is always going to be nice. But you can see this one over here, it doesn't have the 2. That's basically one of the most important things. And you'll see we're starting to build up the stability here. Once we get a certain amount, you'll see where it says Quest Echo Locked 80 Stability. We're going to build up to 80, and then we're going to get this Quest Echo. There's 3 of them, and then once we complete them, that will unlock from here to the next area. It'll unlock both of these. Now, they'll have a number, and my suggestion for you guys is just to do all of them, because like you get to see kind of all the different little biomes, so to speak, and the little like areas, and it's just kind of part of the progression of the game. However, if you are like a min-maxer, I would suggest go all the way on the right side first, and then you can do the left side later. There are other people that like to do certain other things, but honestly, just do them all. I think that it makes more sense just do all the maps in PoE to find out what you actually enjoy. But later you can kind of target farm what you want, and there's prophecies that can kind of tie into this. And this is almost, again, a subject for another video. This is like the basics of the end game. So what we're going to do is we're just going to continuously do these until we get 80 stability, and then I'll show you guys the next one. I'm just going to go ahead and cut to it. So we've done a bunch of maps. Now what we can do is we have enough stability, and what we're going to do is we're going to do this echo. Now I already acquired enough to do it because you can see where it says 160 and 240. So we're going to go ahead and do these echoes, and there's going to be a boss at the very end, which will then let us progress, and we're going to do this several times, which is part of like the progression here. Look at these giant explosions. Oh. Picking up all the purples just in case we can make an awesome build with it. That'll be something we can do. I love these giant explosions, it's great. I'm like stuck, okay. I love the ballistas explosions, it's crazy. But sometimes the ballista spawns in a random location with this, but the whole point of this is basically to eventually get to a bigger boss fight. The build doesn't really matter too much, but we're trying out this thing with traps to summon the ballistae. Now we have to go over to the other area, but we're going to grab all the shrines effects now. And ideally, we just like absolutely face roll the boss. We have like 2 more shrines there, but I just want to progress as quickly as possible. Big explosion. Gotta make sure we have some mana for this build, though. So I can manually summon my turrets and then have whenever I want it to explode. Okay, so that one was one of the things that requires the points. So we've got some mana regen, which is something we actually do need. So now we're going to continue doing the next one, which is the Majet Streets. And then some of the last ones will have like some sort of boss, but we're going to go ahead and do all of them anyways right here. So you can see these are pretty fast. Our build is just so dang fast. Falconer's such a ridiculous class. Boom. Of course, it's a giant explosion. So how my build works is there's ballistae, and then in between the ballistae, there's a tripwire, and it just blows up the whole thing. And eventually what's going to happen is it's going to just blow up legitimately the whole screen. The AoE is going to be so big that it's just going to pop the entire screen. It's going to be awesome. Oh, we actually passed it. It was down here a little bit. And it looks like we just got a legendary as well. And there might be some sort of like a boss at the very end. But these little like echo things here. So let's go ahead and snag the legendary. It's a relic. What does it say? Take the lower squares in an item? Alright. Oh, as in take it, as in clear out all the enemies. Okay, that makes a little bit more sense here. Then we have to go to the upper square, which we've already pretty much cleared out. basically just using the mines to summon the turrets for like a cheaper mana cost, because turrets are very expensive. Basically 2 turrets is my entire mana bar. And then okay, we completed it. Now this next one over here will actually be a little bit different. It almost seems just like another like map, to be honest, but this last one will be a little bit different. So this last one, once we go ahead and do it, it's called the Altar of Flesh. Now this is going to be a boss, so let's go ahead and do the boss now. So here's what the boss, the very first one at least over here, you can't damage him in the very beginning, so you have to damage these things. And he shoots out a little laser. He's pretty easy though. I believe that hits for fire. Probably get more DPS by actually just using the Falcon. Oh my gosh, the Falcon damage is just, it's too crazy good. There are some abilities that actually cannot reach that thing because it's kind of off the map. Oh, okay. Now we're good, we can destroy him now? No, we gotta get rid of the other things. Oh, that does a lot of damage too. We got that. Does really good damage as well. Okay. Now I believe we can damage him. Okay, yeah, we can damage him now. Gotta not stand in the giant like green puddles. I'll go ahead and set up the tripwire for a massive explosion. Once we reach the limit of the turrets, it's going to explode on them. I think it's easier just to use the Falcons, to be honest. The Falcon abilities are much better on the boss. But eventually, once we get the mana cost low enough for this build, we could probably just spam the traps the whole time. It's just that to pay attention to the mana right now, because if we're out of mana, we cannot spam our ability, not only because we don't have mana, but then we don't get the turrets that like come out. So we dropped a legendary over here, but you can see, yeah, the boss, I mean, it was pretty easy fight, but I know how like the boss works. Now, this is also important. At the very end, you get to choose something. Do you want extra XP? Do you want these idols? I just want to go ahead and get the XP because I'm going to try to level up as fast as possible. These blessings are relatively small. But there will be much better ones on the right side that will give you like mana, crit, all the stuff that you'd actually want. But now, once we complete one over here, we can now choose our path. Do I want to go to the left or the right? Now, I mean, I'm level 61, and it's saying that those monsters over here are going to start off at level 60. Does it really matter? Not really, which one you do. Like, we can handle either one. It doesn't matter. But both the sides will open up. We can choose whichever path that we want to go and take. If you want to min-max, go on the right side, but you're basically going to be doing this a bunch of times up until you get to the very end. Then you can go to the center over here, and there's bosses as you progress. But that's like the basic idea of the end game. Alright, this next part is very important that you watch all of it, and the reason why is one of the mechanics will actually allow you to get really good weapons. You are going to be able to get these weapons that have the ability to combine a unique item and a exalted item into one. You get to slam them together, and it's going to add more stats than the item would normally have. And that is acquired through getting these keys. Now, different keys will let you go open different areas, and I want to go ahead and show you guys kind of what they look like. And if you want to get these keys, you just play the game and they will drop. So there are several keys here. So there is the arena key, there is the Soulfire Bastion, there's the Lightless Arbor, and then there's the arena key of memory, which basically just keeps on going on for the endless arena. So basically it kind of just starts off at a much higher difficulty, but pretty much these are the keys that you want to actually engage with. The most important one is actually going to be the Temporal Sanctum Key. The rest of them, they're what I would kind of consider a little bit more optional. Definitely explore and try them out, and you can go through different difficulties of them, but the one that's going to actually be required for everyone is the Temporal Sanctum Key. The only exception is if you are doing Trade League and you just buy all of your gear, which is kind of unrealistic because, well, a lot of times you want to craft it yourself because you may have a niche build and you want very specific things, and it's the highest potential to get exactly what you want. But what you're going to require with this is to get an item with legendary potential. So that's going to be something that we'll explain later on. But if you're wondering what is the best way to progress, now it doesn't matter if you're doing the Merchants Guild or if you're doing the other faction, the Circle of Fortune, the main thing that you want to do is do whatever mechanic, whether it's buy, sell, and trade items, or do any of the different prophecies for the Circle of Fortune. And you want to kind of select the one that you want. Now, if you want my suggestion, I think Circle of Fortune is much better, but if you're a top 1% player of any video game, you still cannot sit there and flip items, by the way, if you're thinking that you could just buy the best items if you went into Trade League. It takes a long time to grind this out, but in theory, if you want the best of the best, unless you're getting it as a drop, the Merchants Guild is, in theory, going to have the best potential to get, like, a godly item with, like, perfectly rolled stats because you're trading with everyone in, you know, that's playing the game. But don't worry too much about, like, which faction to choose. If you want my suggestion, I would select Circle of Fortune. I'm going to be making a dedicated video that goes over the pros and the cons of each one, as I've been kind of swapping in between them, but there's a huge bottleneck specifically with Merchants Guild up until you hit rank 7. But once you hit rank 7, you're pretty much good to go, but it takes a really, really long time. With Circle of Fortune, you can get towards the very end and start getting a bunch of items very fast, and you don't have a huge bottleneck of not being able to just get what you want because you can kind of target farm, and it's just a much faster and smoother progression. You will still need a loot filter, and you'll still need to understand items regardless of which one you do, so don't let that discourage you from selecting either one. But nonetheless, that is a big part of the end game as far as what you are progressing. So choose the one that you want and try to stick with it. However, if you're not having fun with either one, the Merchants Guild has a lot of issues, and some of the items sometimes, like, there's times where, like, things don't get listed, and there's still what I would consider the earlier stages of trade on the game. You cannot flip items, though. That's the most important thing that I wanted to explain, because some people like to do that as far as in-game content where you're just buying items and you're just flipping them and making a profit, but you can't do it. It's basically bound to you. And the items that you acquire in either faction cannot basically swap over, because you'll see some items that I have, it'll say like rank 1, or if I mouse over this one, the game's kind of bugged out right now. So you see where it says rank 7. So this is tied to that specific faction. You cannot basically swap them. That's why I was saying stick with the one that you enjoy. You can dip into both of them and see which one you enjoy, but it takes a really long time to rank up in the trade one. Anyways, so now that I've ranted a little bit about that, because it is very important to try to stick with one, because my thought process was, oh, I'm just going to join one of the other guilds. I was going to go select Circle of Fortune, get all my items, max this one out, and then I was going to swap the Merchants Guild, then trade all the items I got. Doesn't work that way. It's kind of locked. It has a little icon. If you play either one, you can't kind of swap them. It's kind of unfortunate, even just equipping them. But anyways, let's go ahead and go over the keys, because this is a form of endgame content that is very important. So if you want to access these areas, and I'll show you guys just in a second, these different areas. So if I just right click on it, it'll tell me where it's at. Some of these you'll have to walk towards, but there's one that's kind of like hidden, and it's kind of like something that you have to activate by going through something. But as you progress, you can go through different difficulties. I'll show you guys what they look like. It'll be kind of a fast forwarded gameplay. In a moment here, I'm just going to kind of show you the area, show you how to get in, explain the mechanic, and I'm just going to show you the boss fight and kind of how the rewards work. Now, all of these you can just right click and it'll kind of show you where they are, but the arena key over here, you see it's Champion's Gate over here. These are in the same area. All that's in here, I can just go travel real quick, and I'll show you guys kind of the mechanics of this area. It's pretty much just fight waves of enemies, and eventually you get to either continue or you get to go on. All you gotta do when you go into any of these areas, you throw in the key, you hit enter arena, and it's gonna go ahead and open it up. You're gonna fight waves of enemies. I'll fast forward it to the boss so you can see the rewards. It will get harder as you progress in difficulty. So if I throw in this arena key, you can see I can enter the arena, and you can go up into the endless, or whatever the case may be, whatever you want to choose. You'll have to do the first one to get the second, so on and so forth. Now, is it worth doing? Well, you have a spot on the leaderboard, so it's another form of kind of endgame content, which can be a way for you to kind of push your character to its limits and kind of see see how you perform against other people. But we'll go and show off the arena gameplay, then we'll show off the other mechanics, as these need to be explained. It's important that you watch, because otherwise you're going to go in, you're going to die and be like, what the heck, I don't get it. It's important to understand the mechanics, and I'll show you guys the mechanics of it. But the only one that you actually need to do for most part in terms of upgrading, and you don't need to do this ASAP, any of these keys, by all means, I think the best way to actually progress is to actually go here and consistently do whatever blessing that you specifically need. I'll make a dedicated video going over the best blessings that I can recommend. I'll tell you in a short. Get the crit strike avoidance. This thing is so helpful. Unless you have it on your piece of gear, crit damage is what's going to get you killed majority of times in last Epoch, at least in the earlier stages. Otherwise, you can face roll things. And these are permanent blessings. Your character permanently gains. You can see this one rolls to 60 to 90 mana. And in the very beginning, when you only have like 100 mana, getting a double mana pool is just astronomical in terms of your character's progression. So I wouldn't worry too much about the keys until you get legendary potential items that you want to go and slam on with exalted items, which you're going to have to try to acquire these purple items anyways. And it's going to take some time, but just go on the right side and start getting these filled out, and then do all of them in the very beginning. And once you see like the timeline stability, you can do some like the other little quests in the very beginning, but later I would suggest just go straight to the boss once you have the amount of stability, just because, well, in the very beginning that's sort of new content, because they have some like dialogue and there's other things. So I still recommend doing all the little like in between things before you get to the boss for the first time. Then once you've done all of them, you've done everything, you're gonna go to the center and do this thing to get increased corruption. But yeah, let's go and show off some of these other mechanics. We'll start off with like the arena, like I'll show you guys what happens at the very end, and then also the other keys, as these need to be explained. Otherwise you'll go in and you'll rip and you'll be like, what the heck's going on? Alright, let's explain each one of the keys. So this is going to be one of the arena champions. You just literally fight waves of enemies, regardless if it's the infinite one or if you are doing the ones where you're just doing the tiers, right? There's a boss at the very end. They do have some mechanics that you do need to dodge. It's pretty straightforward, though. This one doesn't really need too much of an explanation. The rest of them need a lot more, but some of these are quite challenging. So just like in any action RPG, your main goal is to try to get as much resistances as possible. And as you go through the waves, you can kind of choose your rewards, or you can go ahead and say, oh, you know, I'm done. I want to leave the area. That's fine too, whatever. So I'm just going to go ahead and fast forward some of these, as this isn't really too important. You can see the champion is vanquished, and then you're basically done with that area, and then you kind of exit the arena. That is with the arena key. Now, the one that's important is the Temporal Sanctum. This is the most important one, and this one it does need to be explained. So first off, in order to get there, it's not like, oh, you can just walk there. You have to go to an area that has the portal to allow you to go there, because you right click on it and you'll notice that you can't just like walk over there. So what you're going to have to do is you're going to go to a different area, so you can go to the actual location where you can put in the key. A lot of them you just right click. So you can start off by going to the Shining Cove. You can see where we're located right here, and we're just going to go ahead and walk, and then there's going to be some enemies along the way, but I'm just kind of going as fast as possible. And then we're going to go to the Ruined Coast, and then once you warp in, there's going to be an area, and you basically just get over to the area that you need to get to, and this is from the Ruined Coast, and then you can see the little area over here. But you just get over there, and that's going to unlock the Temporal Sanctum. This is the most important one, though, that I would say that people are obviously going to do. Then you get to the area, just like any of the other areas before, like I showed you with the arena, you put in the key, you go from tier 1. Now, honestly, I would say that in the very beginning, don't worry too much about doing this. You can save these for later, but over here you can see at tier 1, the Eternity Cache can accept unique items with a level requirement of 50 and below. So this one you actually do want to eventually do, as you're going to gain items that may require a higher level. Some of the items, well, they may not require a very high level, so keep that in mind. This is the most important thing that's at the very end anyways. So what you do is you go in, and this area needs to be explained, because if you don't, you're going to get locked and you're going to be confused. So on the controller, the default key is on the D-pad. So it's right on the D-pad. So this is a new skill, basically. So what this skill does is it swaps you between different timelines. So you'll see me eventually push the button. So on keyboard, the default key is D as in dragon. So you just push that button, and what it's going to do is it's going to swap timelines. You have to do it to basically get to the next area anyways. So you're going to push you can see I was trying to figure out which one it was on the controller, because I was playing with the controller at the time. But what happens is When you push the button, it's going to swap timelines. So the map is going to actually change here. So this is very important, and it will let you actually progress. And then you're going to go through these different areas. And once you reach a dead end, you can actually cheat the system. Now, I don't know if they're going to be patching this, but if you use a lot of mobility abilities, you can actually go skip through the gate. It's probably not intended, and it's probably going to be patched if it's not already patched already with their most recent update. But you can technically go through walls, just mentioning that you can do that. But basically, you're going to have to swap timelines. You can see I got to this wall, and I'm going to kill the enemies, I guess, first. And then I'm going to swap timelines, and then now you can see in the top right, the map has actually changed. So you're basically going in between different timelines, and that's what allows you to access the next area, so to speak, in here. And eventually, you're going to come over to a gate, and the gate will actually tell you your reward. So you might get to a gate, and you may have to swap different timelines for the gate to actually like let you click on it and go through. So you can see that there's a new modifier. Now, there are multiple different exits for this area. So you can see the new modifier, enemies drop more runes, but they have increased health. If I don't want to proceed, and let's say like I'm like, okay, no, I can't do that one, it's too hard. It's usually the ones where it's like the enemies deal more damage. That one I would consider more dangerous than them having HP, because in this game, well, Coaling Strike is pretty easy to get on a lot of builds, especially if you're playing with Falconer. But ideally, it's not too big of a deal in the very beginning if they have more HP, because you do enough damage for the most part with most builds. But you can select whatever modifier that you want to go ahead and do, and you're going to have to do this multiple times to get to the next area, and then you're going to go in, and eventually you're going to get to this room, and you're going to have to fight the boss. Now, going over the boss, this is another thing where it has to be explained, otherwise you're going to be like, dude, what the heck is this? That's why I told you guys to watch the video, and if you are still watching this video, good, because a lot of times people watch the video like, I can do it on my own. I'll tell them, like, well, you got to pay attention and watch it all the way through, because this is important. Okay, so when we go in over here, like I said, you're going to go through multiple rooms, and this boss over here is actually important. There, I opened up a chest, but if you're doing a group, it's going to ask you if you want to like proceed. So this is very important. So on Jura, which is the boss in the Temp Sanctum here. So what we're going to need to do is once we engage her, she's going to do a move which will start expanding. Once this purple thing is expanding, I know I'm playing a build where it has this giant red or orange explosion here with my ballista, but there's a purple one. Let me see if I can go back and you guys can see it a little bit more clear before I end up like covering the whole screen with explosions. See how this purple ring is coming out? It's going to pop, and you can technically tank it, but don't expect to tank it, okay? Because it does an insane amount of damage. What you want to do is, when she does that, you want to swap timelines. And then don't just swap timelines and then swap back, because it's still activating. There's a timer that goes on. You want to wait till it actually explodes. So you can see I'm waiting for a while. It just exploded. That was a little dangerous. I actually did it really fast, but I've done this a bunch of times. So take your time. If there's these other pillars in the different timeline, you can destroy those. It kind of gives you something to do while you're waiting for it to explode. And then you just fight the boss. I mean, the boss is not really too hard in the first tier, but that's basically it in a nutshell. You can basically go over here, and she will also go in between different timelines. This is where it gets a little bit dangerous. There's like these orbs. It's kind of like Maven mechanic, but it's way easier. Like, it's a relatively fair boss fight compared to Maven, honestly. I feel like the memory game is really hard for that. But that's a different game. So basically, when the area gets maybe too dangerous, you can swap timelines as well. But it's basically when she does specifically that's the move right there. Again, you see it. You want to go ahead and swap timelines. That's the most important thing with this boss fight mechanic. And then there's another thing. We happen to get an item with what's called legendary potential, and I'll basically give you a brief explanation on how to craft the best items in the game, which are the legendaries. So a unique in this game, with the giant beam, that's a unique, not a legendary. I know in Diablo we call it legendaries, but doesn't matter. So in this, the best items in the game are pretty much going to be legendary for a lot of players. There could be just a set item. Set items cannot have what's called legendary potential. Items can have multiple legendary potential. The more it has, the better. Your goal is to get another item of the same type that is an exalted. That's the purple one. You will slam them together, and I'll show you guys an example of this. Don't copy like what I just did. I'm just literally showing you guys how to do it. So once you defeat the boss, you're going to go to this area. You're going to have to, you're going to see this is an eternity cache. You'll see that it has a question mark. You're like, what the heck is this, right? Again, this is why I recommend you guys to watch the whole thing. You go to this one first. You put in the item. So you put in an item that has legendary potential, and I'm just going to go and show you guys an example of this. So I put the item over here, and then you can see it's not going to change any of these rules. The most important thing is how many legendary potential does it have. And then I take an item of the same type. So that's a ring, so I have to take another ring. So this item over here, it has 4 stats on it, right? The item has 1 legendary potential, so it's going to take 1 random affix. It will not take the implicits, by the way. So it's any of the elemental damage, mana regeneration, fire resistance, or endurance. Any of those rules. Ideally, you get your godly item that's an exalted item, and you get your godly item that is a unique. It only works on uniques, doesn't work on set items, doesn't work on yellow items. It's got to be a exalted item, so a purple and a unique that has legendary potential. You basically throw them in together and you hit seal cache, and then it's going to go ahead and give you the item, but you have to warp in. So you hit seal cache, and then now you can see I got the increased elemental damage, which was on the previous one that had 18% elemental damage, and now that 18% rolls over. Once it's there, you cannot modify it anymore. So it's best to get your item. This is literally just an example. Don't think, oh, should I do this on this? No, it's just I wanted to show off the mechanic for a video, so I went ahead and did that. Okay, so that's that one over there. So that one is, again, the Temp Sanctum. The next one is the Lightless Arbor over here. So this one has a mechanic that's almost similar to Delve. So when you go in, you can see I started off in tier 2, but you go in, you have this crystal. This is the most important part to explain what the crystal does. So you can see it says while you're burning amber, so you get this little like crystal, and it's the same button, D or right on the D-pad for default. So you have this little crystal that's attached to you, and it loses illumination when you are hit. So basically try not to get hit. But anyways, you'll see that we have 100 right here, and then it loses it depending on the percentage of your maximum health. But anyways, the illumination can be restored by slaying amber elementals, which I'll go ahead and fast forward and show you guys what they look like over here. And that will basically refresh the number. So you can see we're 88. Let me go ahead and see where we actually take some damage here. And then I'll try to fast forward when it goes up. Okay, so you can see we're fighting an amber enemy over here. So when it dies, we get more of the amber. So that's basically our resource. Now, why is it actually important? Let me go ahead and actually get the official text over here. So how it works is it says on the very bottom paragraph, enemies outside the amber's light deal much more damage and take much less damage. So basically you can move it, but honestly it doesn't really matter too much. Just get within melee range and then you don't have to manage it. It's much easier. But the boss fight is actually kind of an exception because you do need to kind of actually use it here. So in this area, we're going to eventually get to the boss. It takes a while to get to the boss, but there are these areas that you want to throw the amber to again, and then you can go ahead and there's these little fire things, or it looks like these little branches. You can throw it over there, and then you can start breaking the root walls, and you can move it. And there's this boss over here. It's not really that big of a deal, but at the very end, you can see that we get some rewards from this. Oh, let's see. Or the drops on it. So you have to fight this heart. It's just a boss that comes out, and you can see our drops. Not anything too special over here from this one, but this is where it gets more interesting. So at the very end, there's this giant thing that you can open up. So it does cost a bunch of gold. So it's going to open up this giant mega loot here. So you can see where it says adds a chest that drops an affix with many shards. It almost kind of gives you some way to kind of choose what you want for your rewards. But this is basically your gold dump if you're playing COF, which is the Circle of Fortune. If you're doing trade, I probably would not recommend doing this because it's an absolute waste of gold for the most part. You can see there's several exalted helmets. And for the sake of the video, of course, we're going to go ahead and do it because I want to show you guys over here. So all chest drop with 30% more items, so it's multiplicative. If you want to get, you can see what I opened up. So let's go ahead and open up this giant thing at the very end of the Lightless Arbor because this is kind of your rewards. So you can see a bunch of chests come out, and then we're going to go and pop them up, and you can see a bunch of items come out, and it's very exciting. The very first time you do it, you get all these shards, all these exalted items. I mean, it's just a giant loot explosion. It's very satisfying, but again, if you're playing trade, I'd probably save the gold, to be honest. But you can see we just got a bunch of items, and that's basically Lightless Arbor. So that's it. So as far as in this video, we can go more in depth on some of the other ones later, but I want to kind of make a short explanation. So this one is Soulfire Bastion. So again, right click on the key, and then you're going to be teleporting to the area. You may have to walk towards it, but it's not that big of a deal. So in this one, the new mechanic is that you have necrotic bubble and you have a fire bubble. If I pop the fire bubble, well, it's going to help me out against the fire damage. If it's the necrotic one, it's necrotic. So you can see the fire on the ground. Well, then I would want to keep the fire shield up. Let me see if it has the official text over here. But basically, that's how it works. It's a pretty easy one. This reminds me of a game called Toho, if you've ever played it for the GameCube. Very, very difficult game. But you'd swap between these different resistances. So, you see the enemy. If it looks red and it's got fire on the ground, well, you go red. If you see a bunch of green stuff on the ground, you swap it to the green one. That's basically it. So, but there's something different. Now, when I kill enemies, I'm going to be gaining these little souls. You can see the number going up. So, if I want to do a full clear, if you really want to do a full clear, by all means, you can do it. But the more you kill, the more of the currency that you're going to get. So this little Soulfire currency over here in the Soulfire Bastion, it's going to add up, and you're going to get some stuff at the very end. I'm just going to fast forward to the boss, because you're just going to get to the boss. You'll see the boss over here. He's the Fire Lich, and when everything is red, you want, or orange, you keep the fire one on. When everything goes green, you kind of swap. It's pretty self-explanatory, though. Not too difficult of a boss. You guys should have no hard difficulties with the boss. But then eventually, you're going to come over to the Gambler. So all of the souls that you collect, you can see we got 350. We're going to do a soul gamble over here. So it's basically like a RNG, but you get to select, do you want weapons, armor, accessories, and you can choose what you want. Now, how good is this? Well, it gives you some sort of way to kind of target farm, but I think COF is a lot better, especially because you want to progress in that, and this is I don't know, maybe later you may want to use this if you are doing like trade, and maybe you can get something pretty good off of it. But that is the basic mechanics of those keys that I want to show off in this video. But let's go ahead and just go into kind of like my ending of the part 1 of our explanation, because like I said, there's so much to explain, but this is like the brief overview of like the part 1 of the end game. Alrighty, so that's going to be summing up the introduction to the beginning of the end game. So keep on farming. My biggest suggestion is just keep on doing these up until you get to the point where you've done all of them, and then you're going to be able to do the corruptions. So what a corruption is it's going to increase the difficulty, but you're going to get more XP and better loot. So once you complete all of these, you're going to go to this little center area here, and then you just touch it, and then you can now access the level 100. So every single one of these is going to be level 100. You'll see that there's 2 numbers. There's an 85, and there's like 100 on this one, and then at the very beginning, there's a 58 and 100. Your main goal is supposed to be to try to get the blessings that you want. So let me go ahead and actually open up the blessings page, and if you need this, I will also link it down below, because it's actually very important for your build. Now, I don't know what blessings you want. I don't know what the roles you are, so don't feel like you have to copy mine. That's important. So once you finish, again, you finish all of them, and then you go to the center over here, and then you can select a normal or an empowered. So at the empowered, you're going to have the ability to get no maximum corruption. So the more corruption you have, think of it kind of like the tiers in Path of Exile if you played that, or the greater rift difficulty if you're from Diablo. This is going to increase your rewards as well. So if I choose normal, I have my own like web here, and there's a lot more to this, and I think that it almost deserves a dedicated video, but I'll briefly explain it. Your whole goal is to basically not do the normal ones, because you've already done it. You want to stay on the empowered, because this has a maximum corruption of 50. This really shouldn't even exist to get corruption on normal. It doesn't really matter. This one on the empowered, if I select it, you're going to see on the bottom where it has modifiers over here. It's kind of overlapped on the text, but you can see where it says enemies have increased health and damage, and then there's 60% more health and damage and increased item rarity. And then there's 75 increased experience gained. So as I'm progressing in here, I'm going to be able to kind of branch out and kind of select some of the rewards I want. But in addition to what you've already done before, you're going to be building these things up to get specifically the blessings that you want. That's the most important part of like the earlier stages of the end game. I'll talk more about like the corruption, some of the crazier things that you can do, and read some of the modifiers. Some of these modifiers that have like enemies have a bunch of resistances or whatever, you can actually try to give the ones that give you, let's say, bonus XP, and you can start stacking these. You can see how many they last, just like I explained in the very beginning when you're selecting these maps. But at the end of the day, there is also these other ones where you can change up the web over here, where you can basically reset the web. There's other things that you may run into as you're progressing, and you can actually increase the difficulty. There's like another boss that pops out. Again, this is more reserved for, I think, what I'm going to reserve in part 2 of the video, but you can make the thing have more corruption, which is going to give you better rewards. But pretty much the main goal is to get all of the blessings. So to find out what the blessings are, again, I will link this down below, and you may want to read what the blessings are. So the earlier ones are just the name of it, but once you do the corruption one, you can get what's called grand. You kind of have, maybe, it depends on the area that you're running, you have anywhere from like a I'd say 1 in 4 chance, but it can go up depending on the one that you want to do. Like the one that you want to get the mana, if you type in the word grand, there's a lot more rolls on it, so it may be like a 1 in 8 chance to get the one that you want. But just keep on farming the boss until you get the one that you want. I really like getting this extra mana, but you can get increased cold damage, whatever. And if you don't do the grand one, it's almost like half the stats. But remember, if you're doing it on the normal difficulty, you're going to get the normal ones. If you do it on the corrupted ones, well, you're going to get the corrupted ones, which are called grand. So I don't know what you're playing for your build. That can actually matter for the end game. So your goal should be to get this. That's your main source of power in the very beginning. Later, you're going to want to do those keys, and you want to get, of course, those legendary items, which is basically a unique item combined with an exalt to slam it together and try to get as much legendary potential as possible. And we'll talk a little bit more about min-maxing in separate videos, as I don't want this video to be too long, and it's already quite extensive, information. I don't want to overload you guys with too much. But definitely let me know if you guys have any questions with the end game in part 1, and I'll try to add it to part 2 of our little play session over here. But anyways, thanks for watching. If you guys enjoyed it, drop a like on it. If you're new here, hit subscribe, turn that bell if you want to see more Last Epoch and some more gaming content. Peace out.